So something a few people have been asking about is the gear linkage adjustment. I recently installed a replacement bush that comes from RE Performance, which goes onto this gear change arm here. The standard system has this rubberized mount to it, and it obviously ends up wearing and having quite a lot of movement in it, so it can make your gear change feel quite sloppy. So they make a bush that replaces that goes in here. So what you've got is two cables coming attached to the gearbox coming out, and as you change gears these move back and forth on these cables that you're activating, and then they activate all these linkages. It's quite a complicated system that it goes through. This generally is the backwards and forwards as you change gears, and then this other arm sort of activates each gate as you go through it. So it's a combination of the two moving, but it's this one that gives you your back and forth movement on the gear change. So what you're going to be doing if you're going to change that linkage is taking this unit off completely. But if you just want to adjust the gearbox so that the gear change is in the right spot, one of the first things you're going to want to do is just down in here, hopefully it comes up clearly, there's a little hole here, and if you take the right size bar, or I've got an Allen key, it'll drop down and then it drops into a hole down in there, and that gives you your home position for neutral. So that's a good idea. Before you do anything, make sure you've got that base position to go on. These are actually a really clever little system. So you see there's these springs. Literally all it is these springs are pushing a little plastic clamp here that grips onto the cable. So when you pull this collar back, it will release the grips from like a threaded end of the cable, and then when you release it, it locks that in position. So to adjust these cables, it isn't that you twist these to wind it in and out or anything. You actually push back here to release it, and you'll feel it come, and then if you twist, it'll lock in place. He said, famous last words. There you go, all the way back, and then it locks. So now you can see these fingers have come free. Mine at one point were a bit stuck, so you need to make sure that you free that up. And now in theory, if I move the gear change, this won't move, and this cable will be free to move in and out, and the same with this one here. So what happens is, if you get your gear change in exactly the right position, dead center in neutral, then once that's held in that place, then you can undo this clamp and the cable should be set to the right position for that to change gear nicely. So you can see here where it's loose, you can see it moving back and forth there on the cable. So you only need the tiniest adjustment to make quite a difference on this, and definitely this new linkage made a massive difference on the gear change. I'll just cut to show you the way I line up the gear shift actually inside the car to make it central. So we've got the clamp loose on that cable, so we've pulled that collar back and released it, and now what you'll find is the gear shift now isn't doing anything, because when I'm moving this, it isn't clamped onto the cable. So what you're looking for is that absolute dead center position for the gear change, and then that way you get the throw backwards and forwards nicely aligned. You find with these gearboxes sometimes it'll just either going into first or third and fifth, it'll either sometimes just slightly miss a gear, or you'll get it the other way. And what you want to do is just get that adjustment so that it's just right. What I find is a few bits of card like this, if you just drop them in, it'll naturally put the gear change right in that middle position. You can use credit cards or something like that. So with that nicely, definitely in the dead center position between the gates, then what you're going to do is go back to the car, release that clamp, and then that will put the gear change hopefully in the right position. So I'll just go and do that, and then we'll see how that's lined up. So having put the gear change in the right position, I'm just going to make sure that this rod is in exactly the right place so that this is nicely lined up, and then all I'm going to do is release this collar, and then that now will have clamped nicely into position there with the cable. So now I can pull that rod out and I can go back to the gear to the car and try the gear change and see how that feels. If it feels a little bit too far forward or a little too far back, then just tweak this as you need to make it feel like it's absolute dead center of the gear change. You can do the same with this one as well, by the way, but this one definitely is the one that makes the big difference on the throw backwards and forwards as you go through the gears and has the most effect. This one can have a bit of an effect with the reverse and that, but is a lot easier to set up. Just leave it in its neutral position.